Very good morning and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me start by expressing my deep gratitude to UNESCO International Institute of Educational Planning for honoring me to deliver the keynote address to this forum of distinguished policymakers, diplomats, and academicians. I particularly thank Director Mr. Khalil Mashi for great initiative to pull me to Paris for this event. Thank you very much. I salute the IIEP for pioneering and assisting to produce educational planners globally. I'm fortunate being one among the 15 beneficiaries of their training from Zanzibar. I'm glad and proud to note that most, if not all, of the IIEP graduates are now leading the government institution or leaders in the educational field in their respective countries. I believe this success is due to the fact that the institution has the right people. Keep it up. I had an opportunity working with about 5 to 6 directors during my time as a Minister of Education. All of them, they have done extremely well. But for Mr. Khalil Mashi, as a current director, I can predict the future is going to be very bright. I have been asked to talk on challenges and opportunities facing the educational and policy-making process to tackle youth unemployment and build sustainable livelihoods for future generations. This is indeed a tall order, considering that the time allocated to me is not more than 20 minutes, and I have already used some of the minutes. I like to suggest that the reason behind the invitation to me is I'm a Tanzanian, an African country which has, like other countries, a big challenge of unemployment. As a former Minister of Education for about 10 years, I had the experience of the challenges facing educational planners. I had the experience of being assigned as the Labor Ministry. Assigned as the Labor Minister, that is a challenge of providing job for the youth I have educated. I tried to provide them education for the last 10 years, now I have to give them jobs. The Zanzibar youth make up 29.3% according to 2006 Integrated Labor Force Survey. Those young men and women, if not properly utilized, will not be part of the economic force of our continent. Zanzibar has now a population of about 1.3 million. The current youth unemployment is at around 17.1%. This is the age between 15 to 24. Dear participants, I urge you to allow me to talk more on the African experience on these issues of education and employment. Let me remind this audience of the fact that 10 million young Africans arrive in the job market. In other words, seek employment every year. It is a market already saturated, and the society is uncertain of job creation. Youth unemployment is already 4 times than that of adults. Furthermore, those 10 millions are only in the new arrivals, while there are millions from previous years. It is not uncommon for job seekers to spend more than 2 years before securing employment. Most of these youths who seek employment are of 2 categories: those who are moving from the rural to urban areas seeking for better lives, and those who have been completing either primary or secondary education, the former forming majority. The current labor market requires strong thinking, communications, entrepreneurial skills from job applicants. This is due to the production or managerial needs of the employers. Sometimes the new job applicants do not possess these practical and technical skills. Dear participants, the question or challenge before education planners and policy makers is, are we doing enough to provide the job qualification needs? In Africa, due to the history of illiteracy, educational planners have concentrated more on producing people who can read and write. Skills training are rarely provided, not even in the secondary or tertiary level of education. A case in point is in Zanzibar, where every year more than 8,600 children complete basic education, while Tanzania mainland more than 500,000 complete primary education, and 4,300 complete secondary education in Zanzibar, and in Tanzania mainland more than 400,000 complete secondary education. The current school curricula are not directed at providing skills, whether industrial, agricultural, or managerial. There are many reasons for this situation. One, the main one is the education inadequacies of the teachers to provide such skills. And secondly, the non-availability of the funds to finance the programs of providing such education. Herein lies in the challenge. Do we educate our children just for the sake of eliminating literacy? Or do we plan from the beginning to educate them as future employees? At one time in the history of the United Republic of Tanzania, the then leader Mwalimu Julius Nyerere initiated the education for self-reliance. This policy was workable at that time because most of the school leavers were expected to work in the villages. This was in the 60s. Since then, there have been monumental society changes in our countries. We have moved towards industrial or semi-industrial societies where the basic education qualifications for employment are different and are more demanding. Gone are the times when a secondary school leaver or a college graduate can land a job upon presentation of his or her education papers. Much more now is needed. The 10 million youths seeking unemployment every year cannot be ignored. They form a time bomb that its ignition can destroy the stability and peace of our countries. Dear participants, to minimize the danger of this time bomb, we as planners need to provide the education and training which enable the youth to transit peacefully and orderly to the labor market. We need to have a rethinking of our current schools curricula to see if they are in the line with the employment needs of our time. Secondly, we need to mold our youth to prepare for sustainable employment without being too choosy or selective. This is particularly valid in places where youth refuse to remain in rural areas, even when jobs are available there. We need to look at the fact that globalization has had profound effects on labor markets. While some countries have benefited from more international competition and trade, others have suffered increasing unemployment and underemployment. Youth migration also creates another aspect of globalization and is particularly critical in small island developing countries like Zanzibar, where the domestic labor market offers few jobs opportunities. Yet, at the same time, migration and the transfer of knowledge, ideas, skills and technology through the return of migrants and general mobility are increasingly recognized as a valuable, sometimes vital contributions. Turning migration into an effective development tool for countries with high immigration is a major policy concern in some developing countries. At the same time, let us be aware that youthful labor, especially female, is particularly sensitive to the decline of the labor market condition. In this context, while unemployment and employment rates used to be considered as the main indicators of the conditions of the youth labor market participation, we need to pay attention to those who drop out of the action population when the jobs become too rare. Female school leavers are jeopardized to become job seekers for much longer, and in our African societies to become mother at the same time. As of necessity, they need employment. At the same time, as planner, we need to look at this situation. Our job-creating reforms have to cater for young mothers as well. The large number of young people not in education work or training are increasingly seen as a security problem. Disenchanted, they are easy prey for armed conflicts, terrorism, and crime. In post-conflict situation, demobilized young fighters and child soldiers will turn to violence if not given swift access to education and training, which facilitates their transition to employment. Besides criminality and violence, vulnerable youth are particularly exposed to risks such as early pregnancy, drug abuse, and HIV and AIDS. Education and training are not only variable that determines school to employment transition. Demographic and social characteristics such as ethnicity, gender, and social class have an important impact on the employment prospects and the life experience of young people. However, experiential evidence shows that better educated youth are more likely to find a decent job, decent employment, and are less likely to be exposed to poverty. The real challenge is to prepare young people for lifelong learning in order to sustain their long-term employability and enable active citizenships. Beyond immediate labor market needs, successful transition involves preparing young people for learning throughout life in the context of increasing labor market instability and rapid technological change. Allowing early school leavers to enter the system, we need to train them as potential workers, update their skills, or prepare them for a new occupation. And meeting the demand to learn for relaxations are a crucial challenge. This reality implies reshaping our school curricula and formally give recognition to non-formal and informal learning. On the whole, we know that higher levels of education and training among youth contributes to a better economic and employment growth, improvements in health, and productive political engagement. However, the multidimensional nature of the relationship between youth education and development makers are the efforts of public policies difficult to evaluate and even more difficult to predict. Dear participants, in my country, Zanzibar, formal technical and vocational education and training is now an option for a small minority of young people. Apprenticeships in the informal economy offer many more young people. Apprenticeships in the informal economy offer many more young people an opportunity to learn a trade and enter in the world of work. This situation has its disadvantages, and the government is looking into expeditiously. Since education is taken as the key to effective development strategies, technical and vocational education and training is considered to be the master key that can alleviate poverty, promote peace, and conserve the environment, improve the quality of life for all, and help achieve sustainable development. With this in mind, the Ministry of Labour, Economic Empowerment and Cooperatives, and the Ministry of Education and Vocational Training of Zanzibar oriented the agenda for such action so as to continually provide science and technical skills in relevant and responsive programs, and consequently develop a new generation of human resources. This forward-looking plan, based on declared targets and indicators, is an instrument to make the education sector policy operational and is designed to assist in reducing poverty while creating a foundation for government vision for economic development based upon application of development skills and technology. Another program in preparing youth in Zanzibar is the Entrepreneurship Culture Promotion, commonly known as Kazi Njenje. Kazi is a Swahili word which means work or labor. Nje means out. Now the work is just outside, aimed at awakening entrepreneurial potentials of young people, in instilling a culture of entrepreneurship skills. In this program, which is run by ILO, in collaboration with the Ministry of Labour and Economic Empowerment and Cooperatives, selected deserving young graduates from colleges which have been provided with carefully and balanced program of personal transformation, business development skills, professional consulting skills, and resourceful mobilization techniques. These are the students who graduated sometimes, and we have about 32 of them. We have 10 districts, and they have been very well trained, and now they are training their colleagues in the districts. And I'm sure that in the coming 2 years, the positive effect of this will be realized. Again, it prepares them for transition to employment. This is our contribution towards meeting the challenges of employment. The government of Zanzibar itself, taking it very seriously, has set aside about 1.1 billion Tanzanian shillings to support its people, particularly youth and women, in agriculture, fishing, livestock, and entrepreneurships. Beside all these efforts, the role of public-private partnership is vital. The creation of employment opportunities for youth requires a broad and concerted effort from both private and public sectors. The idea that public sectors has to train and then provide jobs to youth still prevails, especially in Africa. We need a new global approach to address the challenges. Private sectors should be fully involved and committed in both provision of training and creation of job opportunities. Just as governments are, private sectors are direct beneficiaries of skills and knowledge possessed by the young people. At this juncture, it is crucial for the private sector to help the governments in creation of better policies and practices across the variety of issues pertaining to youth employment. We need to tackle the challenge holistically while we remain focused and united. In brief, I've tried to illustrate the employment situation today in Africa, particularly my own country, Zanzibar and Tanzania, and the need for us to rethink our schools' curricula. We must articulate vision for youth employment and initiate job creation reforms. Let us remember that we are living in the world of rapid social and economical changes, which affect the youth more than adults. I've also raised a matter of gender in providing employment opportunities. Time has given us the challenge to prepare our youth for a transition towards employment for their development and that of their countries. This is not the time to falter, said Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. Let me finish by saying time is essence, and we must help our youth not to explode the time bomb. Thank you very much for your kind attention.